need you to sin. Something's wrong. I can't explain it, but I feel it. Please don't let this happen.
The evening crowd moved like a living river through the grand marble lobby of the five-star hotel. Crystal chandeliers shimmered overhead, scattering golden light across polished floors. Soft Afro-jazz hummed in the background, blending with the distant clink of glasses and low conversations in English, French, and Yoruba. Outside the tall glass windows, the city skyline glowed, Lagos alive with headlights and restless energy. She should have felt safe here. Instead, her fingers trembled around the strap of her handbag. He was there again. Near the concierge desk. Standing too still. Watching. Her breath caught as their eyes met for a fraction of a second. The same cold stare. The same unsettling half-smile. He hadn't touched her, not once, but for weeks he had followed her. From her office building. To her gym. To her favorite cafe. Messages from unknown numbers. Flowers without notes. And now, here. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Not again. Please not again. She moved toward the center of the lobby, trying to disappear into the crowd. But she could feel it, that heavy awareness of being hunted. Then she saw him. Across the room, seated near the lounge bar, was a man unlike the rest. Calm. Composed. Impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. His posture relaxed, yet commanding. The staff greeted him with subtle respect. Even seated, he seemed powerful. He wasn't looking at her. But he was her only chance. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. There's much more excitement coming. Her heart raced as she made a decision in a split second. Swallowing her fear, she walked directly toward him. Please understand, please understand. When she reached his table, she forced a small, shaky smile and placed her hand gently on his arm. There you are, she said softly, her voice just loud enough to be heard. I've been looking everywhere for you. The man looked up slowly. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, time froze. Did he see it? The fear behind her smile? The silent desperation in her gaze? Her fingers tightened slightly around his sleeve, a subtle plea. Behind her, she sensed movement. The stalker had followed. The stranger's expression didn't change. But something shifted in his eyes, sharp awareness, instant calculation. He stood smoothly, placing a protective hand at her waist as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sorry, love, he said evenly, his deep voice calm and steady. I stepped away for a call. The stalker stopped a few steps behind them. And in that single, fragile moment, her fate rested in the hands of a man she had never met, a stranger who had just become her shield. The tension in the air thickened. But the night was far from over. It hadn't started dramatically. There had been no threats. No shouting. No violent confrontations. Just presence. The first time she noticed him was outside her office building in Victoria Island, Lagos. The sun had been setting, painting the Atlantic sky in shades of orange and rose. She remembered adjusting her blazer, stepping onto the busy sidewalk crowded with bankers, tech workers, and street vendors selling roasted corn. And he had been there. Leaning against a black SUV across the street. Watching. At first, she told herself it was nothing. Lagos was crowded. People looked at people. It meant nothing, but then it happened again. 2 days later, at her favorite cafe, the small rooftop place where the scent of freshly brewed Ethiopian coffee mixed with ocean breeze, she glanced down from her table and saw him standing below. Not ordering. Not speaking to anyone. Just staring up. Her stomach tightened. Then came the messages. Unknown number. You looked beautiful in blue today. I see you prefer your coffee without sugar. You shouldn't walk alone at night. Her hands had shaken as she read them. She blocked the number. Another one texted the next day. At night, back in her apartment overlooking the city lights, every sound felt amplified. The hum of generators. The distant horns. The elevator doors opening down the hall. One evening, as she unlocked her car in the underground parking garage, a voice drifted from behind her. "You don't have to be afraid of me." She froze. He stepped forward into the dim fluorescent light. Calm. Smiling as if they were old friends. "I just want to talk," he said gently. "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, her voice barely steady. "Please stop following me." "I'm not following you," he insisted. "We just keep crossing paths." But they both knew that wasn't true. After that, she started changing routes. Leaving work earlier. Asking colleagues to walk her to her car. Pretending confidence she didn't feel. And still, somehow, he appeared. Outside her gym. Near her building. Across the street. Always watching. Always smiling. Tonight at the hotel wasn't coincidence. It was escalation. And as she stood in that golden-lit lobby, heart racing, she realized something terrifying. He wasn't going to stop on his own. Which meant she had to find a way to make him stop. Even if it meant trusting a stranger. The air between them shifted the moment their eyes met. Her fingers trembled slightly against the sleeve of his tailored suit, but her expression remained carefully composed, a fragile mask stretched over raw fear. Behind her, she could feel it. The stalker was close. Too close. For one long second, the stranger studied her. Not confused. Not annoyed. Aware. His gaze flickered briefly past her shoulder. He saw him. And then, without hesitation, he moved. He rose from his seat with effortless grace, the chair sliding softly across the polished marble floor. In one smooth motion, he stepped closer and wrapped a firm, steady arm around her waist. The gesture was natural. Possessive. Protective. She inhaled sharply. "Amara," he said warmly, his deep voice rich and calm, as if they'd known each other for years. "You disappeared on me." The name wasn't hers. But she understood the gift he was offering, a role to play. She forced a small, breathless laugh. "I'm sorry. I thought you were still on your call." Behind them, the stalker stopped. The stranger's hand rested securely at the curve of her waist, his thumb pressing lightly, grounding her. His body shifted subtly, placing himself between her and the man who had haunted her for weeks. "Is there a problem?" the stranger asked casually, his tone polite but edged with steel. The stalker's eyes narrowed. "No. I was just checking if she was okay." "She's perfectly fine," the stranger replied, offering a faint, controlled smile. "She's with me." The words were simple. But the way he said them carried weight. Authority. The soft Afro jazz still played in the background. Glasses clinked. Conversations continued. Yet in that small space around them, the atmosphere had hardened. The stalker shifted uncomfortably. He glanced at the stranger's watch, discreet, rare, expensive. At the subtle nod of recognition from hotel staff nearby. At the security personnel who suddenly seemed more alert. For the first time, doubt flickered across his face. The stranger tightened his hold slightly. "Come," he murmured to her, his voice lowering so only she could hear. "Stay close." She did. And as they walked past the stalker, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. The power had shifted. The hunter was no longer in control. But as they moved toward the grand entrance of the hotel, she couldn't help but wonder. Who exactly had she just trusted? The lobby seemed to contract around them. Every light reflected off the polished marble floors, glittering like scattered stars. The gentle hum of conversation continued around them, but the space between the stranger and the stalker carried a weight that made the air tense and almost tangible. The stalker, emboldened at first, stepped forward, lips curling into a smirk. I just wanted to make sure she's okay, he said, his tone deliberately casual, though his eyes darted nervously between the stranger and the hotel staff. The stranger didn't flinch. He stood straighter, shoulders squared, exuding a calm authority that seemed to absorb every inch of the room. His voice, low and deliberate, carried over the soft music like steel hidden in velvet. She is perfectly fine, he said, placing a steady hand lightly on the female lead's shoulder, as if marking her territory without aggression. And she's no longer under your concern. I suggest you leave before this becomes unpleasant. The stalker's smirk faltered. He glanced around, noticing subtle movements he hadn't anticipated, the concierge subtly stepping closer, the security personnel shifting into formation. A tall man in a crisp uniform gave a discreet nod toward the stranger, acknowledging his silent signal. Her heart raced as she clutched the strap of her handbag. Relief surged through her, tempered with awe. The stranger wasn't just a passerby, he commanded the room, and the stalker sensed it immediately. I didn't mean any trouble, the stalker stammered, trying to regain composure. Intent doesn't matter, the stranger replied smoothly, his eyes piercing yet calm, unwavering. Actions do. You've made your choice clear. Now leave. A bead of sweat traced the stalker's temple. He glanced at the security staff, then back at the stranger, realizing that in this battle of wills, he was completely outmatched. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he took a step back, the smirk gone, replaced by hesitation and fear. The stranger's hand didn't move from the female lead's shoulder, a quiet anchor of protection. His posture, calm but unyielding, radiated strength, and in that moment, she understood, she was safe. Truly safe. The stalker muttered under his breath and retreated toward the elevator, disappearing into the crowd, leaving a lingering sense of power and dominance behind him. She exhaled deeply, almost letting herself relax for the first time in weeks. Her legs had felt like lead, now they carried a strange, buoyant energy. The stranger guided her gently toward the exit, his calm confidence leading the way. The city lights outside shimmered through the glass doors, promising safety but also the unknown. And though she had no idea who this man really was, one truth was undeniable, he held power, authority, and control, the kind that could protect her from anything. And tonight, she was under his protection. The heavy glass doors of the hotel swung open to the night air, revealing the city's pulse in every glowing streetlight and honking taxi. Lagos was alive, vibrant, chaotic, and endlessly unpredictable. The scent of warm asphalt mixed with fried plantain from a nearby street cart, and the distant roar of traffic created a rhythm that seemed both familiar and overwhelming. The stranger kept his arm lightly around her as they stepped onto the polished sidewalk. Your car? He asked, his tone casual, but his eyes scanning the street with precise attention. She shook her head, hesitating. I parked across the street. It's fine, I can. He smiled faintly, cutting her off. It's late. Let me make sure you get there safely. Her curiosity piqued as they walked toward the curb. That was when she noticed it, a sleek black convoy waiting discreetly but unmistakably at the edge of the hotel's valet zone. Two SUVs flanked a glossy black sedan, each accompanied by sharply dressed men who shifted subtly into position as the stranger approached. Who are they? She whispered, her voice barely audible over the city's hum. Just friends, he replied, the corner of his mouth curling into a faint smile, though his eyes remained unreadable. They like to make sure nothing unexpected happens. She blinked, trying to take it all in. The staff opened the doors for them with a mixture of respect and deference. Even the bellhops seemed to acknowledge him with a subtle nod, nothing overt, yet something unmistakable in their body language. Every step he took exuded calm authority, the kind that didn't demand attention but naturally commanded it. As they reached the sedan, she noticed the interior, soft leather seats, ambient lighting, and the faint scent of mahogany and fresh linen. The driver, professional and alert, gave a crisp nod, waiting for instructions. She began, searching for the right word. Safe. Really safe, aren't I? He glanced at her. Eyes softened for the briefest moment. As long as you stay close, he said, opening the door for her with careful politeness. I'll handle the rest. Her hand brushed against the doorframe as she entered, heart still racing but filled with a strange mix of awe and curiosity. Who was this man? A stranger, yes, but the way the city seemed to bend around him, the subtle respect, the unspoken control, it was unlike anything she'd ever witnessed. The car slid smoothly into the street, joining the protective convoy. She leaned back, watching the glowing skyline reflected in the windows, and realized that tonight was far from ordinary. Something had shifted, a quiet, undeniable sense that her life, at least for these moments, was in the hands of someone far beyond ordinary. And as the city blurred past, she couldn't help but wonder who this man truly was, and why fate had placed him in her path tonight. The morning sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her apartment, casting long golden slivers across the polished wooden floor. The city below was waking, the Lego streets alive with the clamor of car horns, street hawkers, and the occasional wail of a distant siren. She poured herself a cup of strong coffee, the bitter aroma grounding her racing thoughts. Her mind kept drifting back to last night, the calm authority, the protective stance, the way he had moved through the crowd as if the entire hotel, the city even, had bent to his presence. She shivered slightly, realizing how utterly unprepared she had been, yet how safe she had felt. Curiosity gnawed at her. She couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was this man? Why had he stepped in so naturally? She opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The city outside pulsed with life as she typed his name, the one he had whispered last night, almost like a casual aside, and yet, now it felt charged with significance. The screen loaded. And there he was. Front and center on the cover of Business Africa Monthly. The headline screamed in bold gold letters. Africa's youngest billionaire CEO, the man who controls millions, from real estate to tech empires. She leaned back, her coffee forgotten, eyes wide. Her heart raced, a mixture of disbelief and awe. Every detail of his appearance in the photo, the crisp suit, the composed expression, the subtle charisma, aligned perfectly with the man she had met last night. Scrolling down, she saw articles detailing his achievements, multi-billion-dollar investments, philanthropy programs in underprivileged communities, and ventures across multiple countries. Pictures of him shaking hands with presidents, CEOs, and tech moguls filled the gallery. She felt as if the entire continent recognized him, except her. Unbelievable, she whispered to herself, voice barely above a breath. All this time. I had no idea. Her mind raced. The way he had commanded the hotel lobby, the subtle signals to security, the calm, almost casual dominance, it all made sense now. He hadn't just been protecting her, he had the means, influence, and power to do it flawlessly. She sank into the chair, heart still pounding, and a strange sense of destiny washed over her. Of all the people in this sprawling, bustling city, she had crossed paths with him, at the exact moment she needed protection the most. For a long moment, she stared at the screen, realizing the gravity of the coincidence, or perhaps, fate. The man she had trusted with her safety, without even knowing his name, was a figure of immense power. Her thoughts whispered a single word, almost in awe. Destiny. And in that instant, she understood, last night had been far more than chance. The next afternoon, sunlight spilled lazily across her balcony, casting warm, dappled patterns on the wooden floor. The bustling Lego streets below were alive as always, yellow Danfo buses rattling past, motorcycle taxis weaving expertly through traffic, the distant calls of street vendors carrying the aroma of fried akara and roasted plantains. She had just settled into her favorite chair with a book when a soft chime interrupted the quiet rhythm of her day. A message. From an unknown number. Her fingers trembled slightly as she unlocked her phone. I wanted to make sure you got home safely last night. Dinner tonight, if you're free. I insist, just to ensure your safety. M. Her heart skipped. M. She knew immediately. The stranger. The man whose calm authority had kept her safe. The man she now knew was one of Africa's most powerful billionaires. She stared at the message, mind racing. Safety? Dinner? The words felt like a gentle, unexpected warmth brushing against the lingering tension of fear. A knock at her door startled her. She opened it to find a small bouquet of white lilies and orchids, perfectly arranged in a crystal vase. No card, no note, only a single silver envelope tucked neatly beneath the flowers. Her name was written in elegant, almost regal handwriting, Amara. Hand still shaking, she opened it. Inside, a simple note read, "I trust you enjoyed your morning coffee. Allow me to offer company tonight. Nothing formal, only to make sure you feel safe. M." Her chest tightened. Part fear, part curiosity, part an unfamiliar fluttering sensation she didn't quite understand. She leaned back, letting the cool breeze from the balcony brush against her face, trying to process the audacity and kindness of the gesture. Why would he, she whispered to herself, voice barely audible over the hum of the city. The rational side of her urged caution, yet a different part, the part that had felt his quiet strength last night. Couldn't resist the pull of intrigue. By late afternoon, she found herself standing before the mirror, adjusting her simple but elegant outfit. The lilies rested on the counter, filling the room with a subtle, sweet fragrance. Her mind replayed his steady, protective gaze, the way he had placed himself between her and danger without a flicker of hesitation. And now, this. It was as if the city itself had conspired to remind her, she wasn't alone. A slow, unexpected warmth crept in through her chest, softening the edges of her lingering fear. There was tension, yes, but also a gentle promise. A silent acknowledgement that the stranger, this man of immense power, had not forgotten her. Tonight, she realized, would be far from ordinary. The restaurant was tucked away on a quiet street in Ikoyi, its warm amber lighting spilling onto the cobblestone outside. Soft Afrobeat music mingled with the clink of cutlery and muted conversations, creating an intimate cocoon from the bustling city beyond the windows. The scent of roasted spices and grilled seafood filled the air, drifting from the open kitchen like an invisible welcome. She arrived first, nerves fluttering in her chest. The city's chaos felt far away here, replaced by the quiet rhythm of candlelight and polished mahogany tables. When he entered moments later, the room seemed to shift. His presence wasn't loud or flamboyant, it was calm, measured, effortless. "Amara," he greeted, voice low and steady, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I hope I'm not keeping you waiting." "Not at all," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady though her pulse betrayed her. She noticed the subtle confidence in the way he carried himself, the way the staff acknowledged him with quiet respect yet without the stiffness of fear. They settled across from each other. For a while, conversation felt polite, almost guarded. But gradually, the walls around him began to reveal themselves. "You must think I'm imposing," he said, a slight chuckle in his voice as he picked at his salad. "People often do." She glanced up, curious. "A little, yes. But also, commanding. In a good way." He leaned back, eyes thoughtful. "I've learned that power without restraint is dangerous. I've made it my rule to protect what matters, and to never let fear guide me." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Protect what matters, you mean people?" "Yes," he replied, voice softening. "Family, friends, strangers who can't defend themselves. Injustice bothers me. I can't stand seeing someone suffering when I have the ability to intervene." The sincerity in his words surprised her. Beneath the billionaire facade, the tailored suits, the commanding presence, there was humility. A depth of thought. A sense of purpose that went beyond wealth and status. She found herself relaxing, the tension from the past weeks melting in the warmth of his calm, intelligent demeanor. There was a slow, unspoken chemistry between them, the kind that didn't demand attention but drew it naturally. Her eyes lingered a fraction too long on his, catching the subtle flicker of something personal, almost tender. They shared stories, laughter, and quiet observations about the city, Lagos in all its chaos and beauty, and she realized that behind the mask of power was a man who valued justice, who observed, who understood. By the time the first course ended, she understood that last night had been more than chance. This man, protector, stranger, billionaire, was someone she could trust. Perhaps more than she expected. And for the first time, the fear that had shadowed her life felt distant, replaced by curiosity, and a tentative, growing respect. The city air was thick and humid that evening, the kind of Lagos night where every honking horn and shouting vendor seemed amplified against the darkened streets. She walked briskly from her apartment to the car, the rhythm of her heels striking the pavement in nervous cadence. Even with her senses heightened from weeks of fear, she had begun to feel cautiously safe. Until a shadow fell across the entrance. He was there. The stalker, eyes wild and desperate, had followed her yet again, stepping from the shadows with a furious determination. "You think you can ignore me?" he spat, voice low and venomous. "I won't let you." But before he could take another step, the sound of approaching tires and authoritative voices cut through the tension. From around the corner, two black SUVs rolled to a precise stop, lights dimmed but presence undeniable. Men in crisp suits and earpieces emerged, moving swiftly but without panic. She froze, heart pounding, and instinctively pressed herself against the side of the building. But a calm hand on her shoulder steadied her. She looked up. He was there, calm, composed, eyes sharp as a hawk. "Step aside," he said quietly, almost too gentle for the situation. The stalker laughed nervously, but the humor didn't reach his eyes. "Who are all these people?" he demanded. "People who ensure you don't cross a line you can't come back from," the CEO replied evenly. His voice was calm, but every word carried an unshakable authority. In moments, uniformed authorities arrived, escorted by his team. Statements were taken, evidence already collected from prior harassment, and within minutes the stalker realized the walls were closing in. His desperate moves, his twisted obsession, were no match for meticulous preparation and influence. "Enough," the CEO said, his gaze meeting hers with reassurance. "It's over." The stalker's face paled. He stammered, attempted to argue, but legal documents were handed over. Officers guided him away, his final attempts at intimidation evaporating into nothing. She exhaled slowly, her knees no longer trembling, the city noises fading into the background. For the first time in weeks, the fear that had followed her like a shadow was gone. She was free. He remained by her side, the calm in his presence a protective anchor. "You don't have to face this alone," he murmured. His words carried the same quiet authority, but now laced with something softer, a promise that she could finally breathe. She looked up at him, eyes reflecting relief and gratitude, and for the first time allowed herself to truly feel safe. The threat that had loomed over her life like a storm had been dismantled. And as the city lights glittered around them, she understood, strength, justice, and protection weren't just concepts. They had a face tonight. Her face softened into a tentative smile. "Thank you, for everything." He only nodded, his expression unreadable yet reassuring. In that moment, the night no longer felt dangerous. It felt like closure. The city skyline shimmered in a soft haze of neon and streetlights as Lagos settled into the quiet lull of midnight. From her balcony, the female lead watched the bustling streets below, now a distant hum rather than a threat. The fear that had clung to her like a shadow for weeks had finally loosened its grip, leaving room for something unfamiliar, hope. A soft chime from her phone made her turn. A message. "Good night, Amara. Sleep well. M." Her fingers lingered on the screen, heart skipping. Not a word about power, control, or wealth, only concern, simplicity, and care. She exhaled, a shiver of relief mingling with warmth. That single signal, a subtle plea in the hotel lobby days ago, had led her to this moment. A stranger she had barely known had become her shield, her guide, and perhaps, something more. The doorbell rang softly. She opened it to find him standing there, casually elegant, yet impossibly commanding even in the dim glow of the street lamp. His tailored suit caught the light, reflecting a quiet luxury, and his eyes held that same calm intensity she had first noticed, the kind that could cut through fear and uncertainty alike. "You're still awake," he said, voice low, smooth. "Couldn't resist checking if you were safe." She smiled, a delicate, tentative curve of lips that carried gratitude, relief, and a spark of something new. I am, she whispered. Thanks to you. He stepped closer, not overbearing, but deliberate. I'm glad. His hand hovered near hers, giving her the choice. She didn't hesitate. Their fingers intertwined naturally, like two pieces of a puzzle finally aligning. They stood together in quiet stillness, the city alive around them yet somehow irrelevant. In that moment, it didn't matter that he was one of Africa's most powerful billionaires, that the world beyond these walls moved at a chaotic, unstoppable pace. What mattered was here. Now. The safety, the connection, the unspoken promise that this was only the beginning. She laughed softly, the sound mingling with the distant honks and laughter from the streets below. I never imagined a single gesture could change everything. It can, he said, eyes locked on hers, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. One small signal can shift a life. Sometimes two. The wind carried the scent of the city, salt from the nearby lagoon, spices from late-night vendors, a hint of rain on hot asphalt. She took a deep breath, letting the calm and certainty wash over her. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't running. She wasn't afraid. She was exactly where she was meant to be. And as they turned to face the glowing city together, hand in hand, the world felt full of possibilities, hope, trust, and the quiet magic of destiny fulfilled.